So hi, Welcome to Noise Podcast. I'm Shane.
I'm Glory.
A Throwback Thursday, recorded on a Thursday, posted on a Monday.
Damn right. I know that's right.
Yeah,
I know that shit's right.
We're throwing it back on the Throwback Thursday, keeping it consistent.
We're doing what now?
We're throwing it back. We're throwing it back.
Man, you can throw it back.
I'm throwing it back. I'm throwing it back.
Participating in that. Fucking
follow us on Twitter. I'll be throwing it back on there.
Exactly. Tweet hashtag throwing it back on Thursday if you're also throwing it back today. Again, I will not be participating.
If you're throwing it back on a Monday, but you're throwing it back like you're throwing it back on a Thursday.
Like a Thursday. That's a long tweet. That's a long fucking hashtag, dude. Let's do it. Let's start it up.
Let's get that trending. Yeah, if you couldn't tell by the title, we're continuing on with the Bring Me the Horizon discography dive. Today we're chatting about the 2013 album Sempiternal, the quintessential record, and we will discuss why later on. We have discussed all of the previous records up until this point, as well as the most recent album, because we talked about that when it came out last year. All of those are linked down below. We will be continuing on through the discography for the next several weeks. So if you like that, you like our opinions on things, you can subscribe to stay in tune with our opinions on Bringing the Horizons discography. But Sempiternal, man.
Let's talk about it.
Sandpit Turtle.
Sandpit Turtle. So as you said at the beginning, this is the quintessential Bring Me the Horizon record. When everyone thinks of Bring Me the Horizon, they either think of the opening track, Can You Feel My Heart, or they visualize to me, the band is still stuck in this hair era, this how they look era. I don't know what the fuck Ollie Sykes looks like now. I just think of this era. Because this is their biggest one, I guess, or their most influential era. This record is fucking incredible. I think that it is definitely the obvious next step from their last record, and it's definitely a lot more artsy, creative. I think they take a lot more electronic influence, a lot more orchestral influence. There's some spoken word poetry or just spoken word moments on here. I'm pretty sure it's at the beginning of Hospital for Souls or at the end of Crooked Young. It's in that little section. This record is especially a big deal because this is the first record where Jordan Fish writes and works on it. The last record, he performed in that era, but he was not officially brought into the band in the creative process up until Sempiternal. I think you could definitely hear his mark on this. But a lot of people, after reading, different reviews and interviews and kind of trying to see how this album is gauged kind of in the alternative community. Apparently you either love Jordan Fish and what he brought to the band or you absolutely fucking hate him.
Hey,
a lot
tracks.
of people, and it's so strange because it's like, can't you appreciate a musician for, even if it's not changes that you've liked, it's still something new that they brought into the band.
Yeah, and what's so wild about that is obviously we're living in present day, not 2013 now, and he's left the band, and it was pretty much unanimously like, oh fuck, what is Bring Me the Horizon going to sound like, because he was such an integral part of the sound from this point until their most recent work.
Absolutely. So it's just kind of like, I saw celebrations of him leaving. I was like, Bring Me the Horizon's finally going to go back to their roots. They're not going to be, something I read was like, he made them into like absurd pop bullshit or something. And I was like, are we listening to the same music? Granted, the most recent record does have a lot more pop and bright moments, but just because Ollie isn't fucking hurting his voice, like actually damaging his voice, and you can actually understand what he's saying nowadays, does not mean it's bad, guys. You know, the old shit's still there. Pre-Fish is still there. You can enjoy that, and that's cool. And now we're in the post-Fish era, so you're gonna be fine.
You're gonna be okay.
So this record touches on a lot of Ollie Sykes's addictions. I believe it is, well, it's just the one addiction. I think it is Empire, and I know it's Hospital for Souls specifically are two songs that talk directly about his addiction to ketamine. During this entire album process, he was finding his sobriety, and he was being supported a lot by his band members and his family. So the album starts off with just fuck. This is a growing record, personally, sonically, and influence wise. As I mentioned, they have a lot of techno influences, they have a lot of orchestral, they have strings, a shit ton of strings, and it's just a big sounding record because of that, because of it's not just a straightforward metalcore record. Ollie still sounds like he's hurting his voice on a couple of the tracks, but I mean that's just Bring Me the Horizon.
At
He
this
still
point.
has a couple. You gotta throw a couple of screams in there that make you go, "That's not. You can't do that in 10 years. You can't do that 10 years straight." But he did.
Yeah.
But he did. I fucking love this record a lot. I think that the opening "Can You Feel My Heart" obviously is iconic. Fun fact, probably something that's going to take a badge of honor stripped away from me. Fun fact, before we started this review cycle, I had not listened to the entirety of "Can You Feel My Heart." I only knew, obviously, I don't think it has a chorus, but I mean, I know the "Can you feel my heart?" Like
Yeah.
that part.
Because it
I
had a
don't
big
think
TikTok
that's not a
moment.
fucking chorus. Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, but also just like in passing, I walk into a Hot Topic, and that's the only part that stuck out. I have never consciously listened to the entirety of "Can You Feel My Heart." So
Wild.
starting off the record, I was like, "Oh shit, I understand why this was such a big moment." It has that huge techno influence. It is massive. There's a call and receive. There's so many boxes that were checked just on that one song that makes you go, "Oh, I understand why it was so big. They did everything right there." The House of Wolves is an incredible follow up to that. I think honestly, I think it's my favorite track off of it. It has kind of just that feral, like, just snarling, even though he's not snarling, but just that energy off of it. I think it's fucking incredible. It's fast paced. It kind of melts your face a little bit. It's incredible. I fucking love that song. Empire, as I said, it's kind of more of a. It's either Empire or Sleepwalking. I need to read the lyrics again, but it's one of those songs that is talking about his battle with addiction. And obviously, if you're listening to it and reading the lyrics, you could tell it's a very personal and heavy hitting song. But a great thing about Bring Me the Horizon is you can separate the lyrics from the instrumentals and just hear his voice as an instrument instead of actually what he's saying, which is good and bad. Up to you, up to whatever type of listener you are.
Yeah.
Go to Hell for Heaven's Sake is another one of my favorites. Antivist is a great song. Hospital for Souls is great. I do enjoy it a lot more off the couple listens that I've given it. Because I do really enjoy that they are switching it up. I like when bands, especially heavier bands, on such a strong record like this, do throw some speaking parts into it because it just makes it more of a cozier experience. It makes it a lot more personal. Something that I associate that with is Blink 182's self-titled, where I believe it is the Stockholm Syndrome interlude, where I fucking love that record. I loved it so much. Where it's I think it's a girl, a woman, writing a letter to her husband who's in war or something, and it's just a cute little interlude. I mean, it's sad. It's sad as shit, but it's something that brings kind of just a warmth. Just hearing just a regular talking voice in a heavy or fast-paced record, because that album was not fucking metal, brings comfort to me. Doesn't matter what they're talking about, but it adds an extra layer that I like to records.
Yeah.
Deathbeds is an incredible closer. I'm gonna wrap it up in a second. I'm almost done.
It's okay.
Deathbeds is an incredible closer. I think it nails that mark perfectly for me because, as I said, it gets anthemic, it gets big, it has a big crescendo at the end, and again, you're able to strongly hear that orchestral influence. You're able to hear the strings get louder and just everything kind of come to a head. I think it's incredible. I fucking love this record a lot. I think he touches on a lot of different topics, mental health, just in general, addiction, just anger, because again, it's still sprinkled in there, because I mean, who doesn't have shit to be angry about?
Yeah.
It's just not the entirety of the record like before. I love this record a lot. I think it's great, and I'm really enjoying this deep dive. I don't know if you can tell.
Yeah, it's been wild to watch you come to the table and just take the reins on, you know, making sure you get the first word in, coming prepared, excited, because like when I pitched this idea, you're like, what the hell? Sure.
Yeah.
Because, you know, obviously we've been covering them since the beginning of the podcast, the couple of releases that they've had, but you know, you've never dove into them. So this has been fun to watch, because I've been a fan of Bring Me for a long time now, so I'm familiar with all the albums as we're kind of going in, and you know, Glory's coming to the table with the fresh perspective of basically the first time she's hearing these albums. And for myself, I'm trying to formulate an opinion on albums that I've heard hundreds of times, and it's really, I think. Well, no, this wouldn't be the first. I was going to say this is the first time that's happening, but it's the first time where I'm the one that knows the album, because we did Don Broco, where Glory didn't even have to listen to the records before we talked about them. So it's cool to be sitting in that seat this time. Yeah, man, this record is fucking phenomenal. You know, as I said, it's the quintessential Bring Me the Horizon record. If someone came to me and was like, I want to get into Bring Me the Horizon, I wouldn't do what I did to Glory and be like, listen to Count Your Blessings first.
No.
I would tell them to listen to Sempiternal and then see where that takes you from there. You know, I
honestly,
feel like,
if you don't mind me just bugging in, not even just for Bring Me the Horizon, I think this is the quintessential metalcore record. I think it's palatable. I think it is digestible. I think literally anyone could sit down and listen to this and pick something out that they did like.
Yeah.
No questions asked.
Absolutely. And there's no denying the influence that this album has had on the genre, what the influence that this band has had on the genre, but this album in particular, you know, bands have been trying to replicate this pretty much since it came out. You know, one thing I feel like we've talked about across at least the past couple of reviews, because obviously the band has gotten more experimental and doing their own thing the further along we got in the discography, is that this band has always been ahead of the curve. They're always a couple years ahead. They're doing something that the scene isn't doing yet, but then and people might think it's weird when it comes out. It might be hated, it might be disliked. Yeah, exactly. And then a couple years later, it's what everyone is trying to do and not achieving as well as Bring Me. And then all of a sudden, that record is well liked, but they're on to the next thing already. It's one thing that I've always respected about Bring Me. But yeah, I feel like we spoke a little bit in the last review about, you know, how if There Is a Hell didn't happen, this record wouldn't exist. And I mean, I still stand by that. You know, this album, Sempiternal, is the amalgamation of everything that they have done up until this point. There's minus obviously just the straight up deathcore of the first album. We kind of lost that in the mix, but you know, everything from Suicide Season forward, you know, really comes through in this record. The heavy moments are the best they've ever been. The big orchestral moments have been turned up to 11. And then they start to do new things as well. You know, Fish really being an integral part of the band now allows the band to really get super experimental, do a lot of things with electronic bits and things like that, and all the great things that, you know, Fish brought to the band in his time as a main songwriter. So yeah, I really dig this record. There's genuinely not, like, I was going through it again this morning and I was like, there's genuinely not a single song on here where I can be like, I don't like this.
Skip it.
Yeah, I think now, if I come to it being like, you know, I'm only kind of feeling it, yeah, sure, there's songs that I'll skip, but when I'm into it, digging it, unbiased opinion is there's no skips on this album for me. I mean, obviously, Can You Feel My Heart being the opener is one of the best openers ever in the scene. I would say it's either this, Can You Feel My Heart, or The Downfall of Us All off Homesick by A Day to Remember. Those are like the two quintessential album openers within the scene. Deathbeds as the closer is also phenomenal. Hospital for Souls, that song this morning really caught me, because I'm like, it's got like a haunting vibe to it as well. And it finally clicked for me this morning. I'm like, damn, that song is like really hitting me at 9:30. Yeah, 9:34 on a Thursday morning. I'm getting absolutely slaughtered. But yeah, there's just, it's got its peaks and its valleys. There's plenty of high, heavy moments. And then, there are a couple of cuts throughout the record, like, and the Snakes Start to Sing, Hospital for Souls, songs like that, where the entire song kind of brings the vibe of the album down. Like there are as they did with There Is a Hell, there are songs on this album that feel like they are multiple songs in one. But then there are full songs where it kind of just brings the vibe down. But at no point does it feel like the album is slowing down and like coming to a halt or dragging. Everything is paced the right way, and it flows phenomenally. Shout out Shadow Moses as well, because that is the closest thing we get to a title track where they scream the title in the track. But they continue the big anthemic choruses with the call and response, which is something that they've been doing for the past couple of records, that they again just turn up to 11 with this one. This is still a massive record, and it's just this was the first time. Obviously the band is at the top of their career right now. I can't believe that this band continues to get bigger and bigger, but this is the first time where the band really was like popping. Like it was the first real peak that the band had. So this record's phenomenal. It's hard to talk like genuinely review an album when you come to it and it's just like every single part of this was fucking awesome. Because how many times and in how many different ways can we say, yo, this record smashes, and you're watching this 12 years after it came out and you probably agree that the album also smashes.
Exactly.
I would hope. So yeah, the phenomenal record. I'm excited to continue through the discography, because it does this was like the last record where it was like pretty much like they stayed mostly in their lane. There was plenty of experimentation within what they had been doing, and really making the metalcore genre interesting, but they get even weirder after this sonically, which will be exciting.
Freaky.
It gets freaky as hell. But yeah, those are our thoughts on Bringing the Horizon's 2013 album, Sempiternal. As I said at the beginning, we've been diving through all the discography. Previous albums and the most recent one are linked down below. Subscribe to us on here if you want to hear our thoughts on the rest of the records. We're diving into the whole discography. You can follow us on Twitter. It's Good Noise _cast. Instagram's Good Noise Podcast. Facebook is Good Noise Pod. TikTok is Good Noise Podcast. All your streaming services are Good Noise Podcast, and Patreon is patreon.com/Good Noise Podcast. Get that hashtag trending that we said at the beginning.
Throwing it back onto Monday like it's a Thursday.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Something like that. Rewind. Yeah, get that hashtag trending, tag us. And if you've got any suggestions for bands that we should talk about next, because I can't believe it, we're already like halfway through this.
Scary. I miss them.
Yeah, we're always open to suggestions. Gloria and I have a list of bands that we would love to talk about, but we want to keep people engaged and interested. So if there's a band that people are like, you should talk about this one next, we're going to obviously do that next. So any suggestions, let us know. But other than that, I've been Shane.
I've been Glory.
And we've been the Good Noise Podcast. See you next week. Bye.
Bye.